Hello and welcome to the FCM webinar series. I am Michelle Jolly, Brand Marketing Manager for FCM Travel Solutions in the Americas. Thank you for taking the time to join this webinar today. We are very fortunate to be joined by three of our customers who will be sharing their insights and experiences into managing the COVID-19 crisis. Before we start, I would like to mention that we will be leaving some time at the end of the presentation for Q&As. So please post any questions you may have in the chat window on the control panel to the right of your screens. A recording of the webinar will also be sent to you afterwards. I would now like to hand over to our moderator for today, Carly Theroff, who heads up our account management team, to introduce our speakers and get us underway. Over to you, Carly.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you again for joining us today. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Carly Theroff, and I'm the Director of Account Management at FCM. And with us today, we have three customers, Lindsay Ballram, who's the Corporate Travel and Expense Manager at Alkermes Incorporated, Kevin Fricker, the Global Security Director at Mars Incorporated, and Ben Park, who's the Senior Director of Procurement and Travel at Parexel. We also have Matt Damaris, who's our Global Product Leader at FCM, overseeing our FCM Secure platform. So today we'll discuss with our panel how they've managed the pandemic, worked with third-party risk providers, and any challenges and lessons learned. We'll also get their takes on what travel looks like post-COVID-19. So with that, let's jump right in. And we will start with Kevin. So Kevin, can you please just tell us a bit about Mars and your role when it comes to travel risk management?
Sure, thanks, Carly. I'm Kevin Fricker. I'm the Global Security Director for Mars Incorporated. And on the screen here, you see a little bit about Mars. We're one of the largest privately held companies in the United States. Globally, we have 125,000 people worldwide, 80 different countries that we're in. And that's split up between four of our business segments: Mars Pet Care, Mars Wrigley, Mars Food, and Mars Edge. And that's how we operate globally. And it's been an interesting way in which we look at how we've covered COVID, starting from China and all the way around the world.
Yeah, so Kevin, maybe just speaking on China, talk a little bit about your presence there. I know you have quite a big presence there, and how you kind of started monitoring the situation in that region.
Sure. So as part of the global security team, we are responsible for travel security risk management, and we do that in cooperation with our partner, WorldWare. We've been a longtime partner of WorldWare, and I've been very fortunate to have a couple of analysts that are dedicated to our team who sit in Annapolis, Maryland, Singapore, and Cape Town. And so very early on, we identified this COVID novel coronavirus, as you might recall, and that really started to get the ball rolling in terms of our ability to respond back to this crisis. As many might remember, it started out with just prior to the Chinese New Year. And so it started out with some local advisory notices. That lended itself to a working group, which included supply, HR, communications, and security, and then ultimately company-wide travel notices. So in January, you started seeing active travel with our associates, active tracking of our associates in China, some daily reporting with our countries, airlines, what airlines were doing, what airport restrictions were happening in place. And then in February, you started to see a little bit of our work from home throughout the world. That started to happen more and more. I think it's important to identify the source of the information. So we started to use World Health Organization and the CDC in terms of that information. One of the things that really helped us as well is our cooperation with OSAC. That's the United States Department of State's Overseas Security Advisory Council. And so they've been doing an excellent job of providing some information to us. So the USMC Beijing was a great example of how we're getting situational reports from on the ground. And then certainly the tracking of our global travel throughout the world. And then finally in March, we started to see much more of a robust active tracking of our associates. Restrictions, of course, started to be put in place, and working with travel partners such as FCM to make sure that the restricted trips that are still going are in fact approved by our company, and FCM was a great partner with that. And along the way, data integrity, I think, is very important as well. as you're starting to receive trip cancellations, active trips that are still in the system, you want to make sure that that information is accurate so that you're making those timely decisions.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you have a good relationship with WorldAware, and you kind of mentioned that you have some dedicated people. Can you elaborate a bit on what those analysts do for you and how you kind of worked with them during this crisis?
Sure. So the analysts, again, are very key to our travel security program at Mars. One of the main things that we do is do active reach out messages, I'll call it, for high risk countries. And one of the things, obviously, with the coronavirus is that every country in the world almost became a high risk country almost overnight, it seems. And so they were very key in doing that proactive reach out to those associates who were traveling. To make sure that the trip was still going on. Was it canceled? And if it was going, did they have the right information to make sure that they understand the risk profile of the destination that they're going to? What are the airline restrictions? What are the country restrictions, the airport restrictions that they may be involved in? So the analysts were very key to reach out and do those proactive messaging to our associates who were traveling.
Great. All right, Kevin, thank you. Lindsay, we will move to you. So can you just tell us a bit about Alkermes and how the events played out for your organization?
Sure. So we are a biopharmaceutical company. So we're part of the healthcare industry, which puts us in an interesting spot when it comes to this. We're headquartered in Dublin, Ireland, with offices there. And then we have 2 manufacturing sites, one that is located in another part of Ireland. And then we have a site just a little outside Cincinnati, Ohio, and then our R&D site with offices outside of Boston and a small satellite office in Washington, D.C. We do not have a presence in China, so I will start with that. So we took a little bit, I don't want to say a later approach, but our approach just was a little different because we didn't have to react so quickly, and we were able to take kind of a strategic outlook, so to speak, just like many of our peer organizations that might be in the same kind of seat as us. We kind of watched with the rest of the world, and immediately though, when it was becoming apparent that this was becoming very, very serious, even when it was still in China, we developed a crisis management team made up of all key stakeholders in our company. We had been wanting to do that for a while anyway, and this kind of just nudged us along a little quicker. And so we watched the events unfold in China. We banned all travel to and from China, but for us, that was really no impact to business. And then as the virus really started to spread into countries in other parts of Asia, through Europe, we modified our travel ban to continue to align with those countries. Then we had to look at Ireland because the outbreak was really developing there. So we then decided an indefinite no international travel at all. That took us through about the first week of March. And then I would say by the 2nd to 3rd week of March, we were in a situation where we were on a complete travel ban on all domestic and international travel. We had employees that we had put in an indefinite work from home policy, where if you can work from home. But again, since we are considered an essential business, we have labs, we have manufacturing sites, supply chain, R&D. So we had to carry on and have our sites open and running for business continuity. So for us, it was a mix between getting everyone home, making sure they're safe, but then focusing on the safety and the well-being of those staff that were still coming into the buildings, and what does that look like? And I think we were all figuring this out at the same time. I think everyone can probably agree to that.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you collaborated a lot with your other industry peers. So, being in the pharmaceutical industry, you do have some that is essential. I know that posed a challenge for those people and like you said, the people coming into the office. So can you kind of talk us through, how you manage those internal challenges?
Yeah, so I would say we were faced with 2 large immediate internal challenges. So keeping employees and managers engaged while they're now working from home, and what does that look like? You're now working from home, your children at some point along the way have now joined you, and they are now home for the long run and not going back to school. And that makes what you do every day a lot different. And your just home environment itself is not your work environment. You're distracted in many different ways. I would say also just back to kind of the business continuity standpoint is, how do we keep operating with all of this happening? How do we protect our supply chain? What are we doing at the site level to keep our people safe? You know, we had to evaluate every scenario that you could think of just to kind of make sure we had a process along the way. And it was very well understood by the crisis management team to our employees. A lot of direct communication, a lot of emails that went out and said, hey, this is where we are today. Even tomorrow, this could change. So we were trying to change, and we have been changing our process, our policies, as this has continued to develop and grow. Our teams have done an awesome job at really trying to keep people motivated and engaged, even where we are today. You know, we've done things from putting out kind of user guides on top fun ways to keep your children busy at home while you're home. We've completely flexed our working hours to work for what that's going to mean for you while you're at home right now. So you may have 2 little ones, and your normal 8 to 5 isn't going to cut it. So what does that mean? And how does that impact your role and what's happening within your team and what you do for the company? And then I think one of the other big things that gets lost is, because there's so much out there in the media, and there's so many social media, the news, it's out there, and it's kind of having to take responsibility as a company and figure out a way to calm fears and anxieties and separate facts from fiction. And kind of, so we took a kind of an approach that the WHO had taken, where they had developed a long list of myth busters, so to speak. So we put an FAQ list out that I think really helped people, because there were some wacky ideas out there of how people were going to stay safe from this virus, or things mentally you can do, and what was working and what wasn't. So we kind of just threw a bunch of ideas out there, and in a way that engaged our people anyway, aside from what they were doing in their roles. And the only other thing I can say is that with this crisis management team, we did kind of separate the crisis management team out into subgroups as we went along, because we realized we needed to have smaller groups to be able to focus on, really be able to truly focus on certain topics. So we had a people team that literally focused on how we were going to protect, keep our people safe, and just focus on the well-being of our employees and our contractors. We had a communications team, because getting a consistent message out across the company in all the various ways that you can do that, there had to be a plan, and it had to continue being that same plan all along. And then, of course, business continuity, just a team to address what was happening at the sites and how we're getting our medicines to our patients and our customers. So I'm probably saying a lot of things that everybody on this call can relate to. And even for me as a manager, I have to be honest, some days it has become hard to just kind of feel like, you know, you get lost in your home life sometimes, and you want to still make an impact and bring good work to what you do every day. But we're home, and this is different, and you're not sitting in meetings with people, and you know, it's just, this is all new to everyone. It's insane how this is all played out, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we're all having fun on Zoom, and you know, doing backgrounds and trying to keep everyone engaged. I know that we certainly are here at FCM. So yeah, thanks for that, Lindsay. So I'll throw it over to Ben now. You know, Ben is in a similar industry to Lindsay. So can you just tell us a bit about Parexel and how you guys have managed travel the past few months?
Yeah, happy to. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So a little bit about, so I'm the Senior Director of Parexel in travel, overseeing the travel expense and payment function in small meetings globally, so all the fun stuff. Parexel is a CRO, a clinical research organization, so we are conducting the clinical trials. So this is at the moment, I think, something which is a lot in the news, like who's coming out with the first vaccine, and I don't know the answer, and even if I would know, I wouldn't be allowed to tell. It's certainly not tomorrow. I would be surprised. So Parexel has a dual headquarter around the US East Coast, in Boston and in a much warmer Durham. But I'm based in Germany, in Berlin. So it's 7 o'clock my time already. So, but I haven't had a beer yet so far. And
Don't let us stop you.
Don't let us stop you. Don't let us stop you.
So Parexel has around like 20,000 employees globally and is operating around 60 countries and serving countries and clients in around 100 countries. So really a truly global company, and also with lots of employees in the Asia region and in China. And that's why for us, the whole development of the Corona impact was really in the beginning. I was jumping on a call with China because there was something happening in Wuhan, and we were like looking at it. There are some travel restrictions on this, and all of a sudden this exploded in Asia. So we set up an Asia task force call and looked at, okay, we should avoid any unnecessary travel in China. And on this task force call, basically there was one representative from each function, the internal functions like IT, HR, facilities, and others, and then the more important, the business functions. And so everybody was reporting about, okay, how do we move on with travel restrictions in Asia, and what is unnecessary travel? And then the situation went on in Italy and came to Europe, and then a European task force call was set up, and at the same time an Americas task force call. So then we had, I forgot which month it was. It feels all like yesterday. And we then had 3 separate calls for each region each day, and I felt I was busy all day, just like with many others, just being on calls and trying to sort out the situation. And what I found very interesting is how this developed. First of all, it was more like avoid unnecessary travel, and then it was like when the governments were locking down the countries, all of a sudden you couldn't move, and then it became from unnecessary travel avoidance into stop traveling, and you need a pre-approval to travel. And at this point, really, for us, we were looking the whole time into the global data set about who is currently where traveling, who is internationally somewhere else, who's domestically traveling, as well as who's going to travel in the future. So who has an active reservation. And we really were focusing first on, okay, who's still out there? Are they getting home? Do they want to get home earlier and all this? And I was really impressed how quickly we got the data. And I think this is kudos to Carly, your teams behind the scenes. I mean, this is when you really learn about account management, how they manage magically to get all these numbers. And I think, yeah, Matt's team was stressed behind the scenes on generating the reports. But it was really, I was really be able to report each day to upper management. These are the number of people who are actively on trips by domestic, international, and these are the upcoming trips who have currently reservations. And then we try to reach out to the people with upcoming reservations to say, okay, is this a trip you really want to do? Do you want to postpone this? So this was a massive impact to everything. And yeah, on the internal side, we created for employees a web page internally to really inform everybody about what's going on, because as Lindsay was saying, like, what's the source and how to just cope with all the stuff changing every minute. And so we try to give people guidance on this internally about, okay, what are for travel, the restrictions currently, which airlines are shutting down, which routes, which are important to us, and all of this. So it was really, really a massive amount of weeks. And for us as a company, where traveling for us is almost essential to generate revenue, because in a clinical trial, you need to go to a hospital in current world. You need to go to the patients to see how they're doing, to see if this is all working well. And all of a sudden, if you can't leave your home or your area, you really have to change the way you operate. And this was really impressive to see how a whole global company all of a sudden realizes what boundaries mean to them. And this was impressive. But I'm very, very happy in Parexel to see now the big innovations happening also. I mean, how many times are we all personally a little bit complaining about governments and how responsiveness is not their main primary task? But now they are in this time, they were so quick on changing stuff. And for us on the clinical trial side, all of a sudden it was possible to do certain things over video, like we're doing now. It was possible to do something more remote by just digitally scanning stuff. And I think if we want to look at something good from this, I think it has really accelerated the digitalization for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we would probably all agree that we can do a lot virtually. So it'll see what that looks like on the other side. But Ben, I know you had the task forces that you created by region, and that really helped with the communication, standardization across the globe. Is there anything that you would have done differently with that, or any lessons learned just in the communication piece?
So the task force have been set up by our business continuity team. I could speak this well after my first beer, and so they set this up, and they had a magic plan. It was all prepared, and they know exactly what items we have to go through. And I think it's the lessons I've learned from this is it's important to always review the frequency of these calls very quickly, because in the beginning we were like 2 hours on a call each day, and there was so much information, and all of a sudden it turns into the point where it's like there are not a lot of news. It's the same as yesterday, or some repetitions, and then I think it's very important to quickly say, okay, this is when we should change this, and just check back on certain items. But I think the employee communication is one key. I mean, internally looking at what is important for each employee, for each traveler, for each business unit, and just give them the relevant data. Because I think, as Lindsay was saying also, and Kevin, there's so much information out there from so many different sources. And I think that the filtering, that's the how do you like compress the information and give it relevant to the employees. And I think this was the main task of the task force. And I think they've done it really well.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. So I would like to pose a question to the group. So Kevin, what do you think, we kind of already started to chat about it, but what do you think travel looks like for Mars post COVID-19?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that come to mind when I think about post-COVID-19 travel. The first is that it's going to be different based on the region, based on the geography. If you look at domestic travel in China, some of that's already starting to take place. And you'll start to see waves of travel being reintroduced in the geographies as we look around the world. So whether it be APAC overall, moving into Europe and the United States, and ultimately down to Latin America, you're going to see that geographic changes throughout the world. That's the first item that comes to mind. The second is the confidence in the traveler. Even though countries are going to be able to open up and start to resume, what the new normal looks like in that country, there still is the confidence level of that employee to travel. Are they willing to travel? Do they have the sanitation and the hygiene that they feel appropriate to get on a plane and go to a hotel and so forth? And so there's going to be a little bit of work also in kind of restoring that level of confidence that we all have some responsibility for, I think.
Yeah. Definitely. Lindsay, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think just us reevaluating what our expectations will be across the company moving forward. I mean, it's one thing when you have people that are in certain positions, like for example, take our US-based sales team. They're learning how to deliver messaging and get in front of healthcare providers right now virtually. They never in a million years thought they'd ever do that, or that would ever be impactful. So for someone like them, it'll be interesting to see when we come out on the other side, if they feel that made a difference, if they feel that's something that they could occasionally do. I think what Kevin said, I mean, we've kind of forced everyone to see that you can do a lot of meetings and a lot of, have a lot of calls and do all this virtually. So what does that mean? Are people gonna, not even necessarily out of fear and for health concerns, but just out of convenience now, is there going to be a little less of a need for some travel? I mean, I don't think it'll completely go away, of course, but there may be some some changes to that. And I think just us as a company being able to know, put out there first and foremost that we're not going to force anyone to travel, regardless of what their position is. If they're not comfortable, they don't feel safe. I mean, as a company, it's first and foremost, it's safety and security of our people. So it's just, I think there's still so many unknowns. It'll be interesting to see how the travel industry themselves respond to help us as companies manage our travelers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know, people are probably taking a look at what's after this, what's essential, what's not. Is this, an internal meeting, or, are you going to see a customer? Ben, have you thought about how things may change for Parexel after this, within policies or anything like that?
Yeah, so first going back to how post-COVID-19 and putting on Kevin's point before I answer this one, is that I think there will be a post-COVID-19 international long-haul travel will take a much longer time to really get back to normal, simply because the countries will still restrict entries from foreign travelers. So I agree that China is a good example where some domestic travel is coming back, and I'm hoping this will expand to other countries. But then everything crossing to another country will take a much longer time to get back. So I think we will see basically domestic travel coming back, and only very late the international travel. And to the point, it's about like looking at is travel really important in certain areas? I believe that companies might think about, okay, we've learned so much about video conferencing and enjoyed working from home and all this, and we are as productive as before. So I think travelers themselves will look at it. Is the trip really necessary? Is a one-day trip really, really needed with all the stress? Second of all, companies will, I think, look at, is there any clever pre-approval necessary without creating bureaucracy? And thinking about how can we intelligently find out, like, is this trip really worth it from a safety perspective, from a cost perspective, and from a company output. So there will be, I think, a lot of new things triggered, which will push your company here definitely to innovate on this and build out some products which will help us to then implement that.
Yeah, definitely something that we are always looking to do is to innovate. So yeah, I'm sure within our business and yours, we'll all have some great ideas on the other side that will help us to work more efficiently and all that good stuff. So just regarding just your business, how do you think internally it will change, if at all? So I'll go back to Kevin. I'll let you take the lead on that.
Sure. I think, initially, I think there's some changes, I suppose, will be in terms of the criticality of the trip, whether it be that trip be reviewed by a senior leader of some kind. So I think in the short term, there will be a little bit higher degree of scrutiny than maybe what there had been in the past. And I think that will ease over time. I think to Ben's point earlier, some of the domestic travel maybe wouldn't have as much scrutiny. And so I think that's going to change a little bit in the short term, and I think that will slowly fade away. But I also think that just the level of going back to the level of confidence that the businesses need to instill into their travelers, and how that affects them personally, their willingness to travel, and so I think the traveler will do some scrutiny themselves, and then some of that will also be placed on them by the business on the short term, and again with some kind of evolution over time.
Yeah, definitely. Lindsay, anything to add from your perspective?
I agree with everything Kevin said as far as travel goes. I just think the only thing I would add is how different it might feel and appear once we get back into office settings. Will we all be wearing masks? Will there be the same amount of people sitting in cubicle spaces? Are we going to have to think like that now? Is that something that's going to drastically change just that comfort and that feel that everyone has going to work where their desk is, just seeing all the same faces all the time? It'll just be, I mean, that'll be at work, but it could filter out to your social life as well. Is that going to be the new norm now? So it's all going to feel very different and very foreign to everyone for a while, but we're hopefully like Kevin said, it's a short term overall, and we can get back on our way at some point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the open office space trend will revert back to what it was a couple of years ago. Ben, anything else to add from your perspective?
The only group we forgot are the ones who are keen to get back on the road and earn their miles again. So these travelers who can't wait. So there will be a group on the first day the airport opens. They are there, the mileage earners. No, I think it's Lindsay. Yeah, some will be happy to be having to stay home and say, no, I don't need this trip. But I honestly believe there will be a group which is happy to get back on the road.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we all know who those people are in our own companies. That'll be the first ones the day they can get on a plane. Definitely. Okay, well, thanks for that, Ben. Now I'm going to turn it over to Matt. As I said, Matt is our global product leader at FCM for our Secure platform. So, Matt, as you are the global leader for FCM Secure, you've been at the forefront of this crisis from the very beginning. Can you just share with us some details around managing COVID-19 from our perspective as a TMC?
Sure. So the first step that we took was identifying early the severity of COVID-19. We worked closely with WorldAware and their Response Operations Center, and in January released one of 4 crisis alerts that we distributed via email and SMS. We wanted to make sure that customers were aware of both the local and regional risk of COVID-19 and what risks it posed, not just on China and East Asia, but also the Middle East, Europe, Africa, and then the Americas. We identified early that there was a potential for misinformation to be spread, which is why we made it a key rule to only disseminate information from reputable sources, like the Overseas Security Advisory Council, the World CDC, ECDC, and in the United States, the US State Department and the Department of Homeland Security. We also wanted to focus on our products and make sure that we offer flexible solutions for our clients. That included a COVID-19 report dashboard, which outlined confirmed coronavirus cases by country, WorldAware's critical alerts, departure and arrival reports broken down by region, and country health and security risk ratings. Clients enacted fast to provide new and useful tools via our SAM mobile app. In addition to our travel alerts, we also work to give our customers their risk provider's phone number directly into SAM, so that during instances like this, they could have a choice to contact their preferred risk provider for assistance or contact their travel consultant to make changes to their reservation. Most importantly, we performed an after-action review. In this case, it's more of a after onset action review, just because things are still evolving, just to make sure that we're understanding, did we act appropriately, and how can we improve a perspective and a service perspective so that we can modify and enhance future response to a crisis like this.
Great, thanks, Matt. So how do you think that these events are going to change travel risk management going?
I think there's going to be a continued focus on how COVID-19 is changing the travel market landscape. Airlines may consider to consolidate their routes or potentially liquidate, like we saw with Flybe. We're already seeing changes to loyalty programs and the way that airlines and hotels are providing easier to understand and more flexible policies. I just read yesterday that in India, their equivalent of the FAA announced that it has begun consultations to help its carriers adjust to the new world of travel post-COVID-19 by helping them conduct mock-up drills, work on safe boarding, and seating precautions when services resume. I think there's going to be, new emphasis on things like traveler data, compliance, tools that customers can use to proactively assess risk, locate, and communicate with their traveling workforce. I think there'll be a renewed focus on pre-approvals and how we can get proactive destination risk information into the hands of the traveler, the travel arranger, and travel manager. Everything from pre-trip country guides, trips and progress reports, or tools to track an organization's response to a critical incident. Most importantly, and I really mean this is coming straight from the hard work that I've seen out of our staff day in and day out, I think there's going to be an emphasis on service. During this crisis, it was our people that really stood on the front lines and made sure that each traveler was supported from the time they read about the crisis to the instant they set foot back at their home, which to me is just a real testament to our account management team and our operations teams worldwide.
Great, thanks, Matt. So Michelle has been sending me some questions from our audience as we've been talking here. So I'd like to get into some questions that we've received from the group. So let me start. Sorry, let me go up here. Okay. So the question is, what restrictions does the panel foresee as we start to travel again? For example, health certificates being a requirement to travel. So does anyone want to maybe Ben, since you're in the clinical research realm of things, do you foresee anything being a requirement to say you can come here healthy?
Yeah, good question. I believe yes, we will see something similar than what TSA had and the Trusted Traveler programs coming into, are you like a risk traveler to become, are you a healthy traveler, or your health things, but this will be very critical because you're getting personal sensitive data. And so I think this is a totally other level, but yes, I think there will be something. And also, as you said earlier, it's like people will be not only, as Matt said, like will be looking at more service. They will also look at how clean is the airplane, how clean is the hotel room. I think the whole expectations will be differently, but I believe we will see a different, basically, check-in or security process. And I know some airports and airlines are already testing something on this respect. Yeah, I believe there will be a change. I hope it doesn't end up in another hour in a queue.
Yes, I think we could all agree to that. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Sure, Carly. I'll just add. I think one of the things that's also going to change is that the critical need to be able to communicate with that traveler. Just to add on to something that Matt talked about earlier. As restrictions ease up, as people begin to travel again, it still doesn't mean that there won't be countries or airlines or airports that won't overnight seemingly put in restrictions because they may have hit a wave, or there may be some locally based health concern that will quickly pop up without the ability to inform those travelers way in advance. And so, a company's ability to connect with that traveler, to inform that traveler, is going to be very critical. And also, of course, from the back end, to monitor that and have systems in place so that there is an infrastructure to be able to monitor the changes in the airports, or the airline restrictions, or a country restriction. Because I think that is, if there's a new normal out, things it's teaching us is how critical we need to be able to monitor the on-the-ground situation at various countries where our employees go. And so to monitor that and then be able to communicate that in an effective way so that they don't find themselves, on the other side of a border that all of a sudden, restrictions put in place and they can't return home to their loved ones.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of leads into our next question here. So all of you are part of a global company, and as you look to restart travel, knowing that will be shaped by which nationalities can book travel into what destinations, we've talked about how there's just so much information out there. What would you say is the best global platform to check to find the most accurate information and in real time? Maybe a loaded question, but maybe Kevin and then maybe Lindsay, if you want to talk about what you've used up to this point.
Sure, I think that's a critical question because as we all know, there's so much information today. whether it's the news that you turn on, your local news station, whether it's your country, your nationality of passport, that you're getting information from your country, whether it's your employer. And so it is very critical, in my opinion, to ensure that the employee population of that employer understands where, what is the central source of truth. Is it one government that you're going to use and base information off of? In terms of to educate your workforce, is it a particular country? Is it a combination of all the above? Is it a third-party travel risk management company such as WorldAware, where you're getting really great intelligence about what's happening throughout the world? And so every company is going to be different. Every organization is going to be different. But it is critical to align internally on that central source of truth, because a lot of the decisions that companies and organizations are going to be making, is going to be based on that information, and you've got to be able to find a way to filter it all and ensure that you're getting timely, accurate information that you can use to make those right decisions.
Yeah, definitely. It's great insight. Lindsay or Ben, anything to add to that?
I would agree with what Kevin said. I would think though too that, as much as we know where it is to get the good information, it's also important to point out where not to get information from. So if you want our opinion, we've been telling our employees, just be careful what you see out there on social media. Be careful what you hear on podcasts. I mean, some of these it's kind of like I said, back to the Mythbuster thing. It's not all always, it's not all accurate information, and a lot of it's just out there just to kind of incite people and to get people a little bit scared and anxious, more so than they even need to. So for us, I mean, just aligning ourselves with the CDC, our local government authorities, and for us, because we have Ireland, but then just domestically we have people spread out all over the country. And it seems now at this point that each state is starting to take a little bit of a different stance. So what does that mean? So you can't even look at it, country to country anymore. We're now actually looking at state to state, and who knows, it might turn into county to county at some point. But it's just really trying to stay on top of that and making sure, just because, let's say California opened up, what does that now mean for Massachusetts? We have employees everywhere. So how can we be consistent and fair across the board?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I would definitely agree with you on the state to state. I know, certain states like Kevin and I here in Illinois have been, at stay-at-home orders for almost a month now. So, and the mayor's really cracking down on people being, out on the lakefront. A lot of our trails have been closed, and I know it's not as restrictive in other states. So, so at FCM, we will try our hardest to keep you up to date on the latest and greatest. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Carly, the only two things I would add to the question, like data source, I don't know, but I believe there will be a new third party maybe coming into play, something similar to visa stuff now, where a company knows the restrictions, company knows the nationality of the person, knows the history, and then can tell us where this person can easily travel. So I think we need there might be a new product coming out of this, or a new service. And the other item we should not forget is I believe we need HR much more in the future, because people might need a documentation that they need to go for work to a certain place to conduct business in order to be able to go there. So I think people need to have like kind of a formal document for traveling. And I think we need to think about this process as well, because I believe the leisure travel will be much more restricted for longer term, but the business travel will be allowed much earlier, and you need to somehow kind of identify yourself as a business traveler. And I think we shouldn't forget about this process.
Yeah,
that's true. I agree with that.
Great idea for some innovation there. So, I would agree with that. That makes total sense. Especially if we find ourselves hopefully not in a similar situation in our lifetime. But all right, so let's see, we've got some other questions coming in. How do you see the approval process changing post COVID-19? I think we kind of talked on that a bit, but Does anyone know or foresee within their own organization, if you don't already have a pre-trip approval process, to put one in place?
I would say for Elker meetings, right now we don't have a pre-trip approval process. I think it might be safe to say it's something to consider for the short term until we really are on some other side of this, if that ever happens, truly. I think similar to what the guys are saying as far as how domestic travel will be a lot different than international travel. I think international travel will be scrutinized completely, and I think we're going to have to rely on our agent teams all over the world to help us with the requests that come in if there isn't a formal tool that's being used for trip approval. So in our situation, our employees just go right to the agents or they book online and Concur. So can we modify our Concur configuration to align with what stance we take? And then with the agent teams, just making sure everyone is on board, whether it's an Irish employee or a US employee, what are we doing? And when do we need to be pulled back into the mix as a management team to say, we need to weigh in on whether this trip is necessary or not. So I think we've tested that out a little bit as we've gone along in the last couple months. We've had to, until we went to a complete no travel at all. We kind of had people for a few short weeks there evaluating essential versus non-essential. So maybe we'll be going back to that again. So I could see different levels of that happening, and I could see maybe there's a short-term version of it and then a long-term version. And then should there be another wave of something that comes through, we now know what we can do and if we have to go backwards a little bit. So I think we can learn from any of these tricks that we're all trying to get right.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a good point to say, it might be a pre-trip just for the short term until things kind of get back to whatever normal we anticipate. There was
and
also,
Carly, if I could add, I think something that brought up, in terms of the scrutiny, I think, you may very well have organizations and companies that will put in a formalized process, whether in Concur or their travel booking system. And that will be the case for some companies. For others, I think it also is going to raise the kind of the responsibility of the person's manager. If you have an employee that's going to be booking a trip, thinking about something that Ben brought up in terms of the health aspect of it. Right now, in many countries around the world, you've got recommended vaccines for many countries, and a few countries, like Cote d'Ivoire or West Africa, you have got required vaccines for yellow fever and things of that nature. And so when you think about a post-COVID, normalcy that we'll find ourselves in, and hopefully with vaccines that will come in short order, making sure that the employee who is traveling, that the manager has responsibility to ensure that his or her employee has got the recommended or the required vaccines, if that's the case, that they're aware of the kind of the health aspect of that travel, of the destination that they're going to. And so I think some of that's going to manifest itself in terms of what organizations are going to place the level of responsibility on their managers to make sure that employee is well informed prior to that departure.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So going back to just travel data, obviously with all the changes that the carriers have made with canceling flights and giving waivers for refunds, changing rules on a daily basis at some point in the beginning when this all started. Have you made any decisions on how to deal with unused tickets? Maybe Lindsay, I'll throw that to you to start.
So we're in kind of the beginning stages of figuring out how we're going to do this. And I think we really are going to look to FCM, obviously, to show us and help us a little bit. The agent teams are going to be crucial, and educating our employees and sending out, whether it's incentivizing people to use their tickets or just making sure that they're being very careful when booking. And if you have an unused ticket, it's going to be company policy now that you look to use it with that airline first. We want to recoup credits where we can. I just think it's just going to be a big team effort, and I hope to come out at the end of the year with not a lot left on the table. But you know, again, I'm going to need some help from FCM and our internal travelers to make that actually happen. So it's a lot to think about. I was reading an article the other day. Some companies are considering going using UATP cards and seeing how that can help them get some of this, you know, the funds that are sitting there, being able to recoup them. So it's probably something else to consider. But if anyone out there has any well-crafted strategies on how we're going to do this, please share, because I would love to hear it.
Yeah, and we are working on that at FCM as well. So we'll have something coming out here within the next week or so. But to your point, Lindsay, on the UATP, that's something that we've talked about with the carriers as well. And it may work for some businesses, but you know, if you do a lot of billable travel, it may not work for you. So just looking at those different scenarios. Ben, do you have any other? Have you come up with any brilliant ideas on how to manage on these?
First of all, you know, for me, I'm not getting so scared about the unused tickets parts, because they've always been existing, and the process between the local agent leads managing, looking at the numbers there, was always part of our account review. So we always looked each quarter, like how many unused tickets are out there. We talked to our airlines, and they could track this as well. So it's just the numbers are much larger now, but the process is the same. So all we need to do is ensure the same engine runs a little faster, but I'm not, it's nothing new. So I'm not that scared. The only thing is, what we need to do is, I think we need to see how big is the impact and tell our finance department so they can budget correctly. So for me, it's more an analytical part, less than an operational part. Still, for the agents, a hell of a job the next half year when they're all back on the desk, but they know what they're doing. I strongly believe in this. It's just like the engine runs a lot faster.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and then we've got another question here. Does anyone on the panel have thoughts around travelers combining business with personal travel post COVID-19? Kevin, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's it's probably a tough question to answer, I suppose, because every company and every organization has you know, their own travel policies and their own travel and expense, you know, policies that I'm sure govern some of that behavior. And so I think more than anything, probably what will happen is the need for companies and organizations to review those policies to ensure that the language in there is still consistent with you know, the environment that we find ourselves in at that point. So I think initially it's going to be, you know, policy driven, and that in part may be because of the behaviors that we're seeing, you know, from the employees who are traveling.
Anyone else on the panel have anything to add to that?
My only thought is that I assume some people will travel less because they decided, okay, it's not good for the environment. I've learned that my neighborhood is also quite interesting. And then if they travel for business, they might say, okay, I only do these 2 trips a year somewhere to a far destination. So I use it then to see the city, because I don't want to travel 4 or 5 times in the year, just for a weekend there and there. So I think as companies, we need to see that we support these people who say, I travel much more wisely going forward, but if I travel, I want to combine it. But there are so many aspects to this, and you just touched a few points, and then also taxable benefits and all this. It's just so many points to consider. But personally, I would say everybody who says, I do a lot less trips, but if I travel, I want to combine it with leisure, I would support this.
Yeah, I would too. I agree with that.
Great. All right, we just have a few minutes left here. Does anyone have any final thoughts they'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, just thank you to FCM for helping us all through this. It hasn't been easy for any of us. We're all in this together. And just being able to, for me anyway, just being able to lean on the team at FCM, our agents, our account manager, Matt and his team when data was needed. I mean, we're really just grateful for you guys for being such great partners. So thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your your time and your insights. It's been really, really valuable information. So just to all of our attendees, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. And to find the most up-to-date information on FCM and COVID-19, please visit our website. You can see here on the slide. For our customers on the call today, you can also utilize our FCM secure reporting platform or our SAN mobile app for any info. And then, of course, if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to myself or your account manager. And for those of you who have been engaged with our sales team, you can reach out to them or our sales leader, Pat Keenan. And thanks all again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.